Mystery 8 Blind Frog Ranch. The ranch sat restless under a desert sky, its ridges and caverns whispering legends that never seemed to settle. Each season drew the crew deeper into its labyrinth of energy, anomalies, and buried secrets. Yet this time, with the third season's 6th episode unfolding, the team found themselves drawn back to the place they had both feared and craved, the energy zone. It wasn't just a section of the property. It was a pulsing, invisible heart, a pocket of the unknown that had once threatened to consume them. Now it demanded their return. The call back to the energy zone had been avoided after strange disruptions in previous investigations, malfunctioning equipment, unexplained lights, and a hum that seemed to rattle bone more than air. But avoidance was never a solution on Blind Frog Ranch. It was as though the zone itself beckoned, pulling attention back through odd magnetic spikes, sudden power drains, and an undercurrent of mystery. No one could ignore. Distant sensors began picking up anomalies, oscillating bursts that didn't fit natural geology or modern technology. The data carried a signature that mirrored earlier encounters, almost like a coded message repeating, "Return." And so, despite caution, the team prepared for a new descent into the one place on the ranch where the rules of science and superstition twisted into something inseparable. The approach as preparations were made, the land itself seemed to react. Animals grew restless, equipment lost calibration, and the air grew thick with static even before the crew reached the zone's boundary. Shadows on the canyon walls moved with peculiar rhythm, and the usual silence of the desert was pierced by low tones vibrating through rock and soil. Approaching the zone was not like entering a place. It was more like stepping into a threshold where the world gave way to something else. Old maps were unrolled beside modern satellite imaging, yet neither offered clarity. The energy zone was not just a location. It was fluid, shifting slightly as if the land adjusted to protect or conceal what it held. With each step, the boundary expanded and contracted, a living outline responding to the presence of those who sought to cross it. Strange currents upon entering, instruments began to falter. Compasses spun as if mocking the concept of direction. Geophones caught tremors not tied to seismic activity. Electrical devices drained in unison, their lifespans cut short by an invisible hand. A peculiar pressure weighed down on every chest, not painful, but undeniable, like being submerged beneath unseen waves. The zone pulsed with currents that bent time and perception. What appeared still one moment blurred with motion the next, as though fragments of past and present coexisted. Lights shimmered across the horizon, not lightning, not reflection, but luminous arcs tracing the air. And through the center of it all, the ground seemed alive, breathing, shuddering faintly as if it remembered more than it should. Echoes of history returning, meant facing the tangled history that had always haunted Blind Frog Ranch. Native legends spoke of sacred ground, of portals to hidden worlds, of guardians unseen. The Spanish tales of treasure buried deep beneath layers of stone aligned eerily with the magnetic surges that scientists now documented. Ranchers, wanderers, and even government whispers painted a picture of a land that could not be possessed, only borrowed from. In the energy zone, this history felt thick in the air. It wasn't folklore anymore, but a presence, woven into every vibration and every unexplained phenomenon. The ranch seemed less a piece of property and more a gateway where layers of human ambition and natural power collided. The Return Underground crew knew the zone could not be studied from the surface alone. The decision was made to return underground, through narrow shafts carved into the stubborn stone. Lights were set, cameras adjusted, and sensors lowered. Yet as the team descended, the air grew colder despite the desert heat above. Rocks dripped with moisture where none should exist, and faint carvings seemed etched into walls where no human hands had worked. Far below, equipment once lost was discovered again, corroded beyond recognition, as if years had passed in what had only been months since abandonment. Time itself seemed to unravel, marking its own rules in the darkness. The pulse awakens at the core of the zone. The pulse intensified. It wasn't sound alone. It was vibration, light, and force woven together. The crew noted readings beyond known scales, magnetic surges that could power entire grids if they could be harnessed without catastrophe. The hum rose and fell like a living heartbeat, syncing with the very rhythm of those who stood within it. For a moment, it seemed as though the zone could hear them, as if it was aware. Flashes erupted across senses, depicting figures of heat and motion where none should exist. Shadows of people, spirits, echoes. The recordings refused to settle into any rational explanation. Some images showed outlines not of human form, but of structures, arched passages, metallic frames, geometries too precise to be natural. The zone revealed fragments, never the whole. Energy unleashers, measurements spiked to dangerous levels, lights flickered, then glowed brighter than their power should allow. A chain of instruments activated on their own, relays flipping as though commanded by an unseen engineer. Suddenly, a shockwave rippled outward, subtle yet forceful enough to knock dust loose from cavern ceilings. It was not destruction, it was release. The zone was discharging, as though venting pressure built over centuries. Outside, the land reacted in kind. The sky above twisted with unseasonal colors, auroras forming in desert air. The ground trembled, shallow quakes rippling like a warning. Yet within it all, a path seemed to form, not physical but energetic, a direction into deeper layers of the ranch, deeper than any tunnel had yet gone. The threshold of discovery the crew stood at the edge of revelation. Every instinct warned of danger, but every discovery pushed them forward. Was the energy zone protecting something buried, or was it the thing itself? The reading suggested more than simple geology. Patterns resembling coded transmissions, oscillations that mirrored language more than random pulses. The zone was not just energy. It was communication. What it tried to say remained beyond understanding. Yet fragments carried hints of structure, intention, even intelligence. Whether born of Earth, cosmos, or human ambition long forgotten, the zone existed with purpose. And now, returning to it had stirred that purpose awake. Whispers of the future as the crew withdrew to safety. Instruments continued to record long after leaving the zone's boundary. Pulses followed them, diminishing with distance but never entirely vanishing. It was as though once contacted, the connection could not be broken. Blind Frog Ranch was no longer silent. It was alive, awake, and attentive. The energy zone had always been mystery enough, but now it had shifted from anomaly to enigma, from curiosity to force. Its secrets would not remain buried, not anymore. By returning, the crew had reignited something vast, something that could rewrite what was known of science, history, and reality itself. The ongoing mystery episode closed not with answers but with possibilities. The energy zone was no longer a forbidden corner of the ranch. It had become the center of everything, every legend, every fear, every hope. Its hum lingered in memory, its light imprinted on retinas, its presence undeniable. The return had not been a choice, it had been an inevitability. And so, Blind Frog Ranch continued its vigil, watching over its secrets, waiting for the next step. The energy zone would not rest, and neither would those who had touched its threshold. Mystery remained its language, and the ranch spoke fluently. weaving a narrative where discovery was inseparable from danger. The land itself seemed to whisper a final truth. The deeper the crew ventured, the closer they came not to treasure, but to understanding. And perhaps, when the last chamber was opened, when the final vibration translated into meaning, the world would finally realize that Blind Frog Ranch was never just a ranch. It was a portal, a mystery, an energy waiting to reveal its design. The morning light spread across the basin like liquid metal, rolling over sage and sandstone and settling in the low hollows where the ranch kept its oldest secrets. The air held the metallic tang of a coming storm, though the sky seemed emptied of clouds, and the cottonwoods along the wash stood unusually still. The crew moved through that stillness with careful ritual, marking off boundary stakes and calibrating senses along a path that the land itself would soon erase. The energy zone lay ahead, not as a pin on a map, but as a territory that bent the map into something else. The return felt less like a decision and more like a summons. Preparation echoed with the memory of previous incursions. Batteries that drained in synchronized failure. Compasses that spun until the needle lost interest in north. Cameras that captured frames no one remembered taking. The zone shaped time around itself like heat shimmering above asphalt, and each person who stepped near its threshold carried a quiet calculation behind.